15 minutes left?
Well, 50 to cover this and the academic.
I am almost done with the slides. My friend Jeff is here in the room. We need to enter into the Chinese and Indian market. The truth is, we currently ask our partners in every market that opens up to raise about $1 million over 5 years to get the community off the ground in those individual marketplaces. The truth is, that's a fraction of what will be needed in China and India. We're gonna have to figure out an appropriate funding strategy to enter into those markets. And then finally, we announced at the UN General Assembly, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, it's all kind of blurring together, a partnership with the UN Global Compact around operationalizing the SDGs. We're calling this the SDG Navigator, and the idea is to take the BIA, map it to the 17 SDGs, do a gap analysis, fill the gaps, and provide a tool that allows a company to assess, compare, and improve their performance on the SDGs. It'll be a collaboration, obviously, with our friends over at the UNGC. We are out right now fundraising for that particular endeavor. That'll probably be at a minimum a $5 million build. DFID, our friends over in the UK, have provided the first $2 million. We need another $3 to $5 million to build up the budget. As soon as we get commitments for the capital, we'll get going. Our target is to launch the SDG Navigator, ideally by the end of 2018. Truth is, I think that this opportunity might be among the very largest in front of us. Capital commitments by the end of this year, Jerry, and a pilot of the product by the end of next. And so we'll need a year, Jerry, to do the mapping and the gap analysis while we're simultaneously building the tech platform. The cost structure is threefold: standards, our tech platform, and then a harmonization with the COP platform with the UNGC. The UNGC has a relatively robust tech platform of their own that captures the community of the communication of progress from their 13,000 users. We need to harmonize the platforms. So those are the three principal cost elements of the $5 to $7 million between the two organizations. So why do we need you? We're 10 years in, and I can't tell you with conviction whether we're having an impact. That's got to change. Like we, B Lab globally, can no longer fudge a story through narratives about whether we're having an impact. And that can't be published by System of Bay or B Lab Global. It needs to be published by you. We know that. We recognize that. We cannot continue for the next decade without having clear academic research demonstrating that this movement is having its desired impact. What does that mean? It means research and support. Okay, there's a clear need for incremental research on our work, and we need to partner with you on a more regular basis to try to provide support for the movement, without question. Secondly, the single greatest reason why people join this movement is because they're attracting the next generation of talent. Full stop. The intellectual property is used first in over 90% of the cases on HR listings. This is a vehicle that people use to try to make sure they're securing the next generation of leaders and winning the talent war. I am fortunate to give this talk to Fortune 500 companies and traditional businesses, and I can tell them about increased access to capital. I can tell them about improved consumer loyalty. They don't buy it. When I talk about attracting and retaining the next generation of talent, everybody in the room sits up. Everybody has seen the millennial data, right? The data is overwhelming that millennials are looking for something quite different than when I graduated from college. The stories that we have anecdotally about ways that people have been able to attract their talent because of using the intellectual property are too many to count. You guys are the keepers to the keys of the kingdom. At the end of the day, we need to make sure you are educating the next generation of leaders about doing business a different way. That has to include a curriculum and an engagement opportunity speaking directly to this movement. What does that mean? It means curriculum and student engagement. I know you have a full day on that tomorrow, and we can talk more about how we see ways to work with you on that. But if we can nail those 3 areas, research, curriculum, and engagement over the course of the next 24 months with academia, I think it honestly could change the trajectory of the movement. We can't lose track of why we're doing this, though, because the world doesn't need another certification. There are plenty of bugs on the side of a coffee bag, right? This isn't about a certification, and frankly isn't about even a new legally recognized form. This is about fundamentally changing the role of business in society. As much as I admire government and the nonprofit sector, they are necessary but insufficient. They just won't get it done. They can't scale rapidly enough. They can't access talent as rapidly enough. When they represent literally less than 1/4 of the overall economy, they don't have the opportunity to meet the great needs in front of all of us. We have to get business more engaged. It is the only way forward. And if we can figure out how to harness the power of the private sector to create public benefit, we're talking about using business to alleviate poverty, to rebuild communities, to create great places to work, and to mitigate climate change. That's what we're doing together. We should not lose track of that. Thank you guys very much. Dan? Hey, Sheila.
So what we're going to do is we have a little bit of time. We are going to break into discussion groups to try and collectively generate some ideas for how we move our collaboration with B-Lab forward and vice versa. But I think it'd be good just to have a couple of minutes now for some Q&A, either clarifying questions or just
Perfect.
show Bart. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, since you take China and India as a challenge for you, I just have one question and suggestion for you, because actually I think from last year till now we do feasibility study and action research in China. All the action are finding the needs. Only one thing actually is mentioned in your presentation, speech that is about data. About data. So, I mean, big money comes with great story with data. You need to be a great story, but with data. So our biggest challenge in China to meet all the campaign needs is actually the data. I think I'd rather to buy some data from you. It's so difficult to get the data about all the B Corps around the world. It's very difficult for us to promote. I cannot always say we have Patagonia and I say it's not good convince me now. They changed their CEO. Then I could give another one, Wabi Park. Some of them they have really good 2 minutes propaganda video, but you need more.
Yeah.
So when you think about when you're talking about the fundraising, actually we want to fund you for that. We really want really good data for that. Because for a huge market like China and India, we don't rely on great stories.
On narratives. I'm with you.
For this.
Yeah. I think, Jeff, I think your sentiment is shared by everybody in the room, that everybody wants access to the data.
Yeah, I know maybe because you are in a great change, you need great stuff for that. I think you doubled your staff last year, maybe, so you need people. But actually, data is extremely important for us.
We agree. We agree. And so let's just talk about the data for a second so people understand, because I think understandably there's probably a modicum of frustration in the room and your inability to get to the data. And I totally empathize. I have the same frustration. The truth is when we built our impact assessment, we did not build it with researchers in mind. We built it for a company to be able to use to figure out their roadmap forward. And so the data is unscrubbed. It's incredibly confusing, and it is not properly anonymized. And anybody who puts data into our system we promise them that the data will be held in confidence. And so, Jeff, I'd like nothing more to say, here, brother, take it all. Like, here's all of our data. It's not because, let me just finish. Let me finish. Jeff, let me finish. Okay? Let me finish. So the challenge is, how do we figure out how to create the data structure that is accessible for all of you to use? There are 3 different initiatives we have underway to try to advance the ball so that the data is more readily available to you. Because please understand, it is not out of hoarding or proprietariness or an unwillingness to collaborate. It is out of resources that we have a challenge with. And there's 3 things that we need to fix. One is, if you guys remember, the impact assessment versions every 2 years. Historically, we have not tried to make sure that the versioning maintained a certain level of data integrity from one version to the next. That destroys longitudinal data. You guys don't care about this year's data. You want to look at 10 years of data. And for the last 8 years, we have not focused on trying to build a data set that you can move at longitudinal data. And so then we would change the questions to best meet the needs of the companies, not meeting your needs. And so as we move into version 6, and you'll hear from Dan and Seetla a little bit about this, we are trying to now create a set of metrics that we keep common every version. A core group that you guys can rely on to know that they're not going to change. I can't promise we're going to do that across 200 questions. That would miss the objective of the certification, which is to create a continuous improvement for our community. But if we could figure out a set of data that is constant from version to version, it would significantly improve your opportunity to look at longitudinal data. That's one item. Second item, we are in the final conversations with Wharton to create a team of students and faculty to scrub the data, publish a Bible so that you know what you're looking at, because the truth is, if I gave you the data right now, you'd have no idea what to do with it. It's not built for you yet. So they're going to create what we're calling, you know, the BIA Bible that'll allow you to understand the data through, call it a instruction manual that you can use, all right? That work, Dan, how long do we think that's going to take to finish that work up with Wharton? 6 months? Yeah, 6 months to a year. Okay, and so they have devoted a team of students plus faculty to scrub that data. And ultimately, what we need is, when you guys need data, we point you to Wharton. Our one requirement with Wharton was that it needed to be publicly available data. Anybody who needs data should be able to get to the data. Okay, and so this is not giving ownership of our data to Wharton. It's simply using the resources at Wharton to actually create a data set that you all can use. Third and finally, we are building the analytics platform so that it can be used by academia. Okay, so ultimately what you need to be able to do is have that Bible and the raw data, and then be able to hop on our analytics platform to run your own analysis, okay, against all of the anonymized data. So those are the 3 initiatives that are on the way to try to meet the objectives, Jeff, not of just you, but I think of everybody in the room. And please recognize, again, I want to reiterate, it's not intentional. It's not that we don't like academia. It's purely a resource effort. We just didn't build the data structure with you all in mind. Our mistake. We're fixing it now. Please.
And just to reiterate, there's going to be a whole discussion on developing a global B Corp research agenda. So if you're really interested in that topic, go and join discussion 2 in a few minutes, and you can have a chance to sort of share some more thoughts around that for Bart. Yeah.
So how can we open it up so it's just not Wharton? I mean, you've got, you know, hundreds of schools that could also help out, so it doesn't take a year. And we've got programs in place that do so in the state. You know, we have our analytics.
Totally agree.
We've got students that would love to be able to help out, and academics be able to. So there's the resources there, there's everything. But by keeping it to one institution, you are going to keep a year for the rest of us to be able to get access to it. So are you considering opening it up?
The opposite is our challenge on our own resources, right? So the more people that we actually bring in to help do that data scrubbing, the more people we need at B Lab to actually support you in the effort.
the role we would play.
I understand. We've done this before. We did it with Duke 4 years ago. And I would tell you quite honestly, when we did it with Duke 4 years ago, it was a several hundred-hour investment of B-Lab's time to educate Duke on what the standards were. And so if we did that with 8 of you, I totally appreciate it. I'm just explaining. I understand. I'm just telling you that we do not have the resources. B-Lab does not have the resources to try to parse this out to multiple institutions. It'll be far more efficient for us. I believe, honestly, I think we'll get an outcome more rapidly if we focus our time on a single institution that has a team to work with us. I might be wrong, but that's at least our current belief. And I certainly know that we currently don't have the resources to be able to work with 8 of you on the data scrubbing, because we'll have to tell the same story 8 different times. And we'll work with those questions. And so totally appreciate the offer and thank you. We will move as quickly as we can. Yeah.
So you're B Corp AP.
Yeah.
So, because there was a fellowship program, I think, for a little while where people could go through. So would this be where people who purchase, like pay to attend classes or something to get certified, kind of to receive this AP?
So are you familiar with the questions around the accredited professional program? And so can you describe a little bit more about our accredited professional? And importantly on it, it's at like its inception. So I don't want to pretend like it's baked. It's not.
In real estate, there's a GRI where you go and you get,
Yep.
you know, certifications, the classes, and then
Yep.
you take the exam.
Yep.
And then you're
Same idea. So this will look like the UNGC's accredited professional program. So the it's a USGBC, the United States Green Building Council, the USGBC, has an AP program where they accredit professionals. It's actually not for students, it's professionals who are in building operations, architecture, pretty much everybody engaged in building and operating a building can end up getting accredited. And so we want to create an accreditation program. And you think the first people you'd start with, sustainability consultants and accountants. So if you think about the fleet of folks who are doing GRI verification, really natural additional product for them. On top of that, there's actually a sustainability consultant business association that has over 10,000 members just in the United States. And it exists globally. So we need to build the curriculum, the knowledge platform, the testing facility to then accredit the professions.
One more question, then we're going to break into groups. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for your leadership and inspiration.
Thank you.
It's been an honor to be live. Since I learned that B-Lab was a 501c3, I've been wrestling with this question, so I thought I'd ask you directly. Why 3 guys that were so successful in business decided to start a nonprofit to run this movement?
Bane of my existence.
Need for philanthropic capital.
So the truth is, I would believe that capital would be far easier to raise if we were a for-profit, to be really blunt and honest. We had 2 significant challenges when we began this endeavor. The first was our backgrounds. When we started this work, we were wrestling with, is this going to be a nonprofit or is this going to be the first certified B Corp? Are we going to emulate that which we're trying to build? And the question from the broader community is, what's in it for you guys? Like we came out of the private sector. There was immediate suspicion that this was about personal gain and private wealth. So we had that challenge. B, at the core of our work is a set of standards. And the challenge with a standards organization, we've all seen standards organizations in very recent memory with a single payer system that went sideways because of a profit motive. And so you cannot be in a situation where people think that you might lower the standards to increase profitability to build your movement. You have to remove any, to start at the onset, people cannot question whether your standards have integrity. And so when we realized that the core of the work was going to be a set of standards, and the 3 gentlemen who were starting it were private sector, it was pretty self-evident that we didn't have much of a choice.
But I have one last question, Pete, before we go to the discussion group. So you made a statement that 10 years in, you don't know if you're having an impact.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that? Like, what do you need to prove that you are having an impact?
Sure. And so if you think about, back to that theory of change slide, there are a few assumptions that are in the theory of change slide. The first assumption is that the community of certified B corporations are better companies, and that they're better on two fronts. One, they're creating more impact. And secondly, they're more resilient. And so there is a question about whether that is true, whether that B corporations, in fact, are creating more impact than traditional businesses. And secondly, whether they actually are more resilient from a financial perspective. Not more profitable. The argument that we make consistently is over the long haul, these are more resilient businesses. So that's the first. Secondly, the question is, the next stop in the theory of change is encouraging millions of companies to follow. And when they follow, are they following in a way where there's actually normative behavior change that also results in institutional change? And so we need to prove both. We need to demonstrate that the 65,000 are engaging with the tool in a way where they're actually making fundamental changes in their business. And we also have to demonstrate that the standard and the corporate form are penetrating institutions. Because long-term, we're going to need both. We're going to need normative behavior change, and we're going to need a change in institutions. So that's the second piece. The third piece is after you've demonstrated that you have millions of companies following who are both creating behavior change and influencing institutions, do individuals care? Do consumers, workers, investors care? Are they moving capital in a different way because a company is proving to be a high impact business? And then fourth and finally, does that lead to impact? Have we improved people's lives? Has carbon been mitigated? We need to demonstrate over the course of the next decade, we have to answer those four questions. Right? And we need to be in a place, so people can think about how we frame this. I think it's useful to this room, is what we want to be able to say is if more companies were like a B Corp, or if 70% of the companies in a particular jurisdiction were a B Corp, X million people would be pulled out of poverty. Y million tons of carbon would be mitigated. Z million dollars of philanthropic capital would flow, right? You can run down the list of ways that we're hoping our companies have an impact. And we need to at least begin to be able to say that. And so that's what I mean by that. I'm really proud of where we're at. I actually think we're making an impact. I can point to a lot of anecdotal evidence that we're actually moving the needle, but it's anecdotal. Like at the end of the day, we're going to need to put numbers behind all of that so that people can see demonstrably that each of those four steps are being met.
Well, that sounds like a challenge for a bunch of smart academics.
That's why I'm here. That's the softball that I threw in the middle.